speakers, and I can't wait to introduce them to you. So without hesitation, let's get cracking. So the first person I'd like to introduce, I think it's only fair, ladies first, is Dr. Amy. She is from Marathon Medics, and I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Amy. I'm a foundation year 2 doctor currently working in A&E in St Thomas's Hospital. And I also run a website called Marathon Medic, which is aimed at runners, particularly new runners, trying to motivate them, get them into running, and also offer flexible training plans to improve their health.
I'm going to tell everyone about my horrific running story probably later on, but I'm definitely going to be using Amy's website to maybe motivate myself. I swear, if you can do that, you have talent beyond means, because my motivation is 0 for running. Okay, now, again, like I said, ladies first, it's only polite. Dr. Caroline. She's a psychiatrist trainee from Amsterdam, so she'll be helping us understand sort of like the international aspect of health during the early years of medicine. Dr. Caroline, take it away.
Yeah, I'm a psychiatry trainee in Amsterdam, and I do research on the relation between suicidality and depression and plus psychosis. And I joined the healthcare leadership last year in the Amsterdam cohort, and I'm also really interested in global mental health in the resource settings. So I collaborated with medical aid films to create animations and video material for adolescents in low-income countries. And I'm really excited to be here today.
That's amazing. Wow. I'm actually currently in psychiatry now, and I'm just obsessed with it. I love it. But mind you, literally every single rotation, I'm like, oh my God, I can see myself doing this forever. Like, I just love it. So whenever I tell like my parents or my friends, like, yeah, I think I'm going to be a psychiatrist, they're like, okay, cool. That's like the 50th specialty you're going to be now. And I'm like, yes. Okay. So next we have Dr. Anas, who is founder and CEO of Patchwork. So the future of flexible working. Take it away. Tell us a bit more.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anas. I am an A&E doctor by background, and I am the co-founder of Patchwork Health, which is a digital platform that's trying to revolutionize flexible working in the NHS. I've had a very unorthodox career in healthcare. I was a grad entry doctor to do medicine, so I did as a mature student to start with, and I remained unorthodox since then. Hopefully excited to be on today to share some of my experiences.
Yeah, amazing. I must also say your glasses are pretty cool and mine are pretty cool. So, well, I just really wanted to show off my glasses basically, but your glasses were taking the limelight away. So it's fine, you know. You might have to do like a little vote off, like whose glasses are actually the best. And finally, we have Dr. Cameron, who is co-chair of the TED Senior Foundation, and very important message behind that. So I'll let you tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, lovely to be here, everyone, and yeah, especially with such a esteemed panel as well. It really is a great honour to chat to you today. I'm Cam. I'm an academic foundation doctor over in East London at the moment, currently working in neurology, but I also co-chair the TED Senior Foundation, which is a suicide prevention charity, which has several arms really. We run a crisis text line 24/7 for students and anyone that's in crisis, and we also run the TED's Friends scheme, which essentially uses sport as a vehicle for better mental well-being and suicide prevention. Essentially, we aim to train up students in university to have better, more proactive conversations with their peers to, you know, better mental well-being and health in general. So it's great to be here.
Oh, that's amazing. I keep hearing all these things, and although you know, I was researching you all just to make sure that I can shine light, you know, as much as you guys deserve. But when you sort of describe it yourselves, I'm just like, it hits me again, like, wow, okay, that's amazing. So I need to go back and like email you all and be like, how can I get involved in your amazing schemes? So please reply to my emails, otherwise I'll be very upset. Okay, so now that everyone's got a bit of a flavour for all of our amazing panelists, I think it's only fair to move on to how was your foundation years, you know, what happened, the good memories. Let's start with the good memories, I think. Let's bring people in slowly. So Anas, do you want to take us away with your unorthodox journey?
Yeah. So I did medicine, as I said, as a grad entry in London at Imperial College, and I graduated in 2014. And it meant that I was slightly older than some of the F1s and F2s I started with. I was in my late 20s. Many of you guys were in your early 20s. I actually had generally very positive experience as overall a positive experience as an F1. I did my F1 in Canterbury, Kent and Canterbury Hospital. So I got the advice to choose. I was planning to stay in London, and most London foundation doctors will have to choose a year in and a year out of London. So I got the advice to do my F1 outside of London because of that small DGH feel that comes with an experience that gets you to do more interesting clinical stuff, but as well as get more of that support and individual attention. And of course, sometimes it feels like a draw of luck who you end up working with, your clinical supervisor, your education supervisor. But I think fundamentally, what really made a whole lot of difference from my experience as a foundation doctor was the fellow foundation doctors I was working with. There was a sense of camaraderie. We're very supportive of each other, and it felt like you're going through a very shared experience that built strong bonds. But we learned from each other, and we just made it a whole lot easier. So I certainly felt that element of the experience was quite important. I think, given that I've come in from a slightly different background where I had an established I was set in my ways prior to doing medicine, I was very kind of keen to maintain all the hobbies or interests, professional or personal, that I had before doing medicine, before being a foundation doctor, whilst I was a foundation doctor. And I think I did that because I just wanted to, but I definitely think it helped. It helped maintain my sanity. That life wasn't just about your shifts, especially when the night shifts kick in, that you have your whole life outside of the hospital's boundaries are still, it has not been completely sacrificed. So I think it's important to try your best to maintain some of that and make a conscious effort not to give up your hobby, your sports, whether you run marathons. I certainly I kept on cycling. I kept on doing my other kind of professional interests, and I certainly really strongly recommend doing that. And the last thing I'm going to say on that is make your experience as a junior doctor a lot more than the jobs of a junior doctor as a foundation doctor. Because foundation doctor, especially F1, the jobs are not the most exciting jobs on the ward. It is nerve-wracking because you're now doing real medicine, you're playing real doctor, and definitely a very steep learning curve. But you're not operating on people. You're not making that final diagnostic decision. At least not often. You're not. Certainly not the first few months. So make sure that you're getting involved in other aspects of hospital experience, whether it's quality improvement projects, whether it's research, carving up time to do more, or participating in hospital change projects, innovation projects, gets you to really understand the healthcare system more holistically beyond your relationship with your stethoscope. And I think as you go through healthcare, you'll find out that quite a lot of what we do as doctors or nurses or healthcare professionals goes above and beyond the day-to-day interactions with our patients. And often those aspects of healthcare have a bigger impact on our patients and our careers. So get involved as early as possible in understanding the forces that will impact your career, how hospitals are managed, how healthcare is funded, how patients flow through the system. Even if you're just dabbling with it early on, it definitely will give you a much better idea of how you want to shape your own career down the line. So get involved as early as possible. And also, as I said, makes F1 and F2 a lot more exciting and more interesting.
Well, thanks, Anas. Yeah, so basically what I took from that in the few years when it takes me to finish my degree, get stuck in every aspect don't do the conventional jobs because they're quite boring, but like find your own jobs. And that quite nicely brings us on to Amy with all the side hobbies, the running, the sport. So how was your foundation? How were your foundation years, and how did you manage to keep the exceptional athleticism with the running? Please shine light on this problem. Oh, Amy, hold on. I think you've got your mic muted.
Sorry.
No worries.
So I'm F2 at the moment, so I've only just started F2, but my F1 overall was a really positive experience. I did the similar thing and went for DGH my first year. So I was in Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Woolwich, which is still in London, but it's a smaller hospital. And I think when you're first starting out, I would definitely recommend trying, if possible, to be in a DGH, because you kind of feel a lot more involved. It's a smaller place. You can walk into the canteen and know everybody. And I think that really helps when you're starting new and you're quite scared. The first few months is always the toughest, I think. The smallest things, which, a year down the line won't stress you out, will stress you out at the beginning. So I remember first prescribing, the really simple drugs is really nerve-wracking. And I think being in a hospital where you can make friends and have the support around you is really helpful. In terms of keeping up with activities, I think it's really useful to keep up with your activities, but also just think about how much time you have. So I think it's really easy when you're in medical school. It's a lot more flexible. You can probably do every single thing that you want to outside of medical school. But when you start your foundation, just think about how much time you actually have and what your priorities are. So it might be that you have to just pick the few things that you love and keep doing them. And there might be some things that you do have to say no to, and that's okay. It might be worth just starting your F1 for a few months and then thinking, actually, now that I'm settled in, what other things do I want to take on, and try and follow your interests. So for me, some of my jobs that I had, they weren't the best jobs for me right at the beginning. But actually, if you go into each job thinking, okay, let's do this as if I might want to do this as a career, I think you'll be a lot more open to the opportunities that people will offer you. And that's the easiest way to do projects, is to have them offered to you and have experiences offered to you, and then just take them up and try and enjoy the specialty that you're in, because you might never get the chance to do that again. So I would definitely go in with an open mind to all your jobs. And then, just think carefully about what you do outside, and just try and adjust how well you think you're going to do with all of them, because, as I said, your time is more limited. So say for me, running is my passion. In medical school, I had all the time in the world to push myself and kind of get the times I wanted. And I just had to rethink about why I was running, which for me is a stress reliever. It's social. So I've just changed my distances now to kind of longer, slower distances, because I know I can manage that rather than coming home from a long shift and needing to do a speed session, for example. So I think it's just about thinking about the time that you have and adjusting your hobbies to pick the top things that you want to do. And also maybe you just need to change how you do them a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think that sounds quite practical. Mind you, saying that, I was like, oh, I actually do the same thing, after my busy 4-hour shift as a medical student, doing very little with little responsibilities. I come back and I think, oh no, I can't hack a 45-minute workout. That's too much. Let's just do 20. Let's relax. Okay, let's not burn out. But then Amy, on the other hand, I think I'm just going to do sort of 10K after my busy 10, 11-hour shift. Just different contrasts. But I do like the lack of responsibility on the medical student front of things. Oh no, the junior doctor, that's sort of, oh no, that's the actual doctor's stuff. I can't get involved in that. So Caroline, do you want to tell us sort of about your international version of foundation years? So, once you just qualified from medical school, the what you did, and sort of the good and the bad stuff about when you first qualified.
Yes, we have a different system in the Netherlands. So our med school is we have a bachelor of 3 years, and we have then 3 years of internships. So we rotate through different specialisms in 3 years' time. And then we already start to get to know a bit the working hours, and you work together a lot with residents, and you get to know a bit better, where you see yourself working in the future, or where you want to specialize in. So that's, I think, a really important time to get to know, what your own interests are, because a lot of people go into their internships with a different view of what they want to do than how they end up in the end. It kind of shifts through the years, because I think a lot of people also start to look at their work-life balance and how much time they want to spend actually while in the hospital versus how much time they want to spend outside of work and your own priorities and of course, yeah, your own passions. And then after those 3 years, you are qualified, and then you start kind of like as a doctor, not in training. Some people go immediately into training. And I think one of the best experiences for me during the internships and also just after qualification is that I was really surprised by the amount of that patients give to you. And all the conversations that you have, and you're part of a lot of important decisions in different lives throughout the day. So I think it's also really important that we are aware of maybe sometimes that can also be why we maybe feel a bit overwhelmed sometimes after days with a lot of critical conversations. That there are a lot of plans and that it's a really beautiful part of the work, but it can also be really important to restore. And I can also relate to the first times that you prescribe medication and that you really think like, oh, I hope it goes well, or during like night shifts and of course in psychiatry you have a lot of people who who come in sometimes to the emergency room and they are kind of, they use drugs normally and then they haven't for a while, and then you have to take action, and that can also be sometimes every first is of course it's more stressful than when you get used to it or when you know what the protocols are. But I think of course we have a job that you learn by doing a lot, so it's really important that you find co-workers and also people that you can relate to and that you can discuss this with, so that you do, because we are always a team. It's never you alone. So I think that's really important. And I think it's also, I mean, it's the time in your career that you can really be active, ask a lot, ask for mentoring. A lot of people higher up want to guide you, and I think it's also really a time that you can form opinions about maybe how you want to treat people and if you agree or not with the culture that's somewhere and how you view that and what you want to, what you would like to change or be involved in.
Gosh, that's exciting, knowing like different, you always like forget what I do, definitely, that different countries have their own like pathways to produce little doctors, but that sounds really interesting. I like that a lot. It's sort of similar but just different names, I would probably say, between the countries. So it's quite good to have like a little a different country sort of perspective on health during those years. So now Cam, finally we're on to you. I read that it said that you're currently doing neurology, and I feel sorry for you because I get huge like neurophobia or whatever it is that they call it. It's just so difficult. Please tell me you found the same.
I mean, I wish I could say that I was finding it easy, but I can't either. No, it is complicated. But actually, so my disclaimer is, yes, I'm still doing my foundation year. So hopefully it doesn't go downhill from here. But I think it's quite refreshing that everyone said they actually really enjoyed their foundation years. Well, at least like on the whole. And I'd have to say I completely agree as well. I think it's one of those, I think it's quite a unique time in your medical training where you can really do the things that you want to do. You can experience loads of different specialties. And like for myself, although I'm doing neurology now, I'm very keen to do psychiatry when I finally start training. So for me, it's actually been a really nice experience to just do medicine, which I think for the rest of my career I'm probably not going to do as much of. So actually it's nice to rotate around your surgical specialties, A&E, and the medical specialties as well. It's been great. And all this obviously on the back of going through the first peak of the pandemic and things like that, and actually coming out the other side and saying that it was still pretty good. So actually for people watching, I think it's incredibly daunting when you first start thinking, I'm going to have this responsibility on my night shifts. I'm going to be the only person looking after all these patients in a hospital. I mean, it can seem like that, but in reality, that's not usually the case. So like the rest of the panelists here, actually, I did my F1 in Newham in East London, so it's a really busy DGH, a lot of sick people who come in far later than they probably should do. So it's a bit of an uphill struggle sometimes, but the actual experiences you get from working in the DGH are phenomenal. You get more responsibility, you get more opportunities to do things that perhaps would you generally go to your IMTs or your core medical trainees, but because there's less of you around, you get more opportunities to do cool stuff. So I think that was really, really important. And I think just in general, even with COVID, I think obviously, even though it was an absolutely terrible time at points, I think my more interesting reflection on it was that actually, in terms of the way people were working, actually for me, and this might not be something that's shared by the rest of the group, as a doctor, I felt way more part of a team. I felt way more incentivized and supported as a junior during the coronavirus period than I was prior to that, which is might be a bit of a weird thing to say. But actually, you had your seniors there on site. They were always willing to help. You worked as part of a firm structure, which is now just gone from medicine. So you knew the people and you got sort of used to the people that you were working with on an on-call shift. So you could trust them. They trusted you, maybe rightly or wrongly, but actually you all kind of learned how to work with each other, and I really do think it made a massive difference to actual patient safety rather than different people taking over at different points, random handovers. So actually, yeah, the positives that were there actually through what was a really, really challenging time. But I think now people are kind of saying like what their reflections on other things about F1 and F2 were. I think, Anas, you mentioned that actually, your friends or your colleagues are just really, really crucial to you during those years. I think F1 especially is such a great leveler because no matter which medical school you went to, everyone's really nervous when you first start. So you could be the best medical student in the country or the worst, but actually you've still got to prescribe normal saline and you'll still have to look at the BNF to check the paracetamol dose. So actually, if you take it like that and think, you're all in this together as a group of colleagues, then I think that's the way to get your most out of it.
You know what, I won't lie, guys, I am quite glad that the general consensus is that we love foundation training. We have a great time because from sort of my end of the hill, there's a lot of rumors like, oh my God, F1 is so stressful. Like, good luck. Like, you're never going to see like your friends, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your parents. And I was like, whoa, this is quite like extreme. What's happening that I don't know about? So now I'm just going to hit back and then be like, well, actually, I was speaking to 4 quite incredible doctors and they said it was great. So that's it. The general consensus is you do have some good times. So now moving on to, because we're going to be real, we're going to be honest. So we're going to move on to like problems that you faced in your early training years. So Caroline, can we start with you? Like any problems that you had and doing all of these sort of project works that you have on the side, like if you were doing them from straight after graduating, like how did you manage to like balance things? Was that maybe one of the problems, do you think? Or
well, I think it's for me it's also a bit like where do you get energy from? Because I think what's really challenging in training doctors is that it's really also like practical skill that you have to learn like live, but usually it's embedded, of course, in hospitals and in hospital systems that deliver patient care, and they also deliver research and training of junior doctors, but usually the patient care and it's like their main priority, and sometimes it's really difficult to create a balance in all those 3 pillars. So sometimes I think when you are like a junior doctor and also when you're a resident, sometimes you have the feeling that your education is not always like the highest priority for the workplace. And of course that you also just do a lot of tasks that maybe you do not learn from anymore. So in a way, for me, doing like things outside of medicine also, or related to medicine, but in a different environment, also gives me a lot of energy. So I did a lot of student work during my internships and talking with people about how to change the well, the internships and how to create more feedback really like in real life, because usually we get feedback afterwards. And it was also viewed that a lot of junior doctors or people doing internships were not really supervising their patient contact, but always afterwards when you go to your superior and you talk with them about the patient. Yeah. So we try to change that. And I think if you have passions, then it is really it can really work in a positive way if you want to work on that outside and be with like people who have the same interests. Because of course we are more than just healthcare workers. Yeah. A lot of people want to do also things outside of the medical or the hospital world. So yeah, that's I think, and of course it's about prioritizing what Amy also said. You have to make a balance, and sometimes you have to learn to say no, and that's also a really good thing to learn. Yeah.
So you were saying that, you know, one of the problems that you faced was literally like getting the energy to just do the task. And like you said, like some of the tasks just do seem really boring. Like whenever I'm pestering the junior doctor, like, you have a cannula that I can do? They're like, yes, take 4 cannulas. I've got 8 left. Do them all if you want. And I'm like, yay. And they're literally there looking at me like, how does this girl have so much energy? Anna, do you find the same thing? Like, was energy, like finding the motivation to actually like, I don't know, get up out of bed, was that one of the problems in your foundation years, or did you find other things?
I mean, for me, finding the energy tends to be before a string of night shifts. That dreadful day before the first night shift, a string of 4, and you're like, oh no, this is going to be now a block a week. But then once it actually starts, it's actually a lot better. It's always psychological. You just need to get out of bed, just go for that first shift, get into that rhythm. And I actually was one of those, I think, I know I'm not the only one, but I'm one of those doctors who did enjoy night shifts and weekends more than day shifts in general. When I'm in there, I hated the fact that it impacted my personal life, my social life. Yeah. You know, when I'm working weekends, I'm not actually with my friends and family on weekends. But I felt like I was doing more real medicine at night in the weekends. So that brings me to what frustrated me the most in foundation year is most of the time you are doing admin tasks. You're not doing, you're chasing a radiology scan. You're running around hospitals trying to drop a piece of paper so someone's being booked for a clinic. You are a taskmaster going through a to-do list with a checkbox and a piece of paper trying to get stuff done. But very little of that is engaging your clinical mind and engaging your communication skills with the patient. And I think this is probably one of the most frustrating things about modern medicine. The answer is not give it to someone else. The answer is we need to find a way so we stop spending human hours doing these kind of tasks in clinical medicine. So it's not bring us more physician associates or this should be done by nurses. No healthcare professional's time should be spent on these kind of tasks. Yet we still spend quite a lot of time of junior doctors and other healthcare professionals' times on that. So I think that was probably my biggest frustration when I was quite eager to get myself involved in either innovation projects or change projects and transformation projects in healthcare or the clinical aspect of healthcare. And I found a good chunk of my time, probably 40-50% of the time, is just doing things that we should not be really spending time on. And I think it's almost a symptom of our complex healthcare system. So this isn't one of those comments where you'd feel like, well, can technology solve that problem? Technology probably can solve that problem. But often some of the old school doctors would say, well, what did we do back in the day when we didn't have technology? Well, back then we didn't have complex healthcare systems. We didn't have complex pathways for patients. The clinical pathway was very straightforward. You just had engagement with one doctor and that was it, compared to the complex pathways that patients go through that require complex admin tasks, referrals, documentation, and follow-ups that we just need to start investing in better systems. So that was, I guess, my main frustration. But it was softened by everything else that I did enjoy about being a junior doctor and the support I got. And like I said, feeling that as an F1, F2, night shifts and weekends were my escapes from admin life into actual real medicine life.
Anna, so you weren't lying when you said that your route to medicine is unconventional. I feel like you're maybe like the first and only doctor to say, no, I just love a weekend shift. Honestly, guys, it's great. But I get that, because I think whenever I sort of speak to junior doctors, they're always saying like, yeah, I've got nothing for you to do in the afternoon because I'm just doing my admin, so it's really boring, just go home. So I'm not even there yet, but I already like have this drilled into me that you're admin-y for the whole first 2 years, basically. Cam, how did you what were the problems or obstacles that you faced? And I know that, you've got projects on the side as well. So has that been difficult to manage, or were you sort of like Caroline, where it's almost like a little escape to do them?
If I'm speaking honestly, it probably isn't an escape, because I'm one of those people that sometimes struggles to say no to doing certain things when it sounds cool or interesting, or when it's something I'm passionate about. But I mean, we'll probably get onto that later on, sort of balancing things. But I do have to again agree with Anna that actually I think a lot of the time you feel like your service provision when you're doing F1 and F2. Apart from my A&E job, where you actually, which was really good because I managed it, you were able to clerk in patients and stuff like that, even though you had a lot of support, at least you were actually thinking about the things that you'd learned for the past 6 or 5 years at uni. Whereas doing the ward rounds and literally just, ticking off boxes for bloods and chasing stuff is kind of soul destroying at times, especially when you're waking up in the dark, leaving work in the dark, and you get no vitamin D, and basically can be quite tough especially over winter. But I think actually, like personally for me, the biggest sort of challenges that I faced, especially at the start of F1, I'd say. So I trained in Wales and came to London then to start F1 and F2. And obviously when you're meeting new people and when you're first starting out, I think people need to realise that people's experiences of F1 and F2 are vastly different. And at certain stages, so say you're 4 months into F1, someone may have just done maybe a psychiatry job or a GP job or something like that, whereas someone's just done 4 months on gastro, which could be a really acute medical job. And at different points during the year, you will have really different skills and really different learning experiences. And I think sometimes it's maybe the way that we are sort of set up or built as medics or healthcare professionals, that you're kind of always constantly compared to other people, and you think, oh my, I really should know that. Like, I don't have those experiences. I'm clearly not as X, Y, and Z, and that can be. But my advice would be that actually you need to remember that F1 and F2, despite some of the terrible service provision that you'll do, is supposed to be a training program. You're not supposed to go into it as the finished article by any means whatsoever. So comparing yourself to other people along the way is completely futile, and it is going to be something that will end up having an impact on your own mental health. So I do just think that sometimes and it's easy for me to say now looking back, but taking a step back actually from the clinical shift and thinking, what have I learned in this 4 months block that is going to help me to become a better doctor? Actually, you should see it as a sum of the whole parts, really, not just, I've just done 4 months of psychiatry. I can't do anything. I can't do, cannulas. I can't do bloods. I haven't done anything, really medical for a long while. In the long run, these experiences will make you a better clinician. And I do sometimes think that we compare ourselves too much to each other, and actually, you need to kind of think about what you want to gain out of a job rather than just what everyone else is doing. But that would be my little bit of advice, I think.
Fab, yeah, that seemed quite. I enjoyed that. It was very sort of honest. Amy, what about you? I know that obviously you run Marathon Medic as well. Did you find that tricky to manage during your first year as a junior doctor, and what other problems did you maybe face?
I think I'm similar to Cam in that I think and a lot of medical students as well will be people that say yes to everything, so it's really hard to say no to some things, but I think it's a good opportunity to really hone down on what your interests are, because your time is maybe a bit more limited, and just put your energy into the things that make you happy. And then actually that's a break away from work, and even though someone else might think, oh, you're so busy, how are you doing all of that, if it's something that you love, it is that break and a bit of space away from your clinical duties. And being organized, I think more than anything, going back to the comparing between other foundation doctors, we're all going to have different skills, but the key skills that we all need to develop through the year are the simple things like good communication, good time management, being organized. And I think that translates from your professional life and also into your personal life. So if you want to do things outside of work, that's great, and you definitely should, but just make sure you're organized, have your to-do list, make sure you're keeping up with your clinical portfolio, and then doing the things outside of work, because you don't want that to start eating away into your clinical time, and the things that are expected of you for ARCP as well. But in terms of things that went wrong during foundation, to be honest, not very much. I definitely had a positive experience, which I think is hopefully reassuring to everyone. I'd say one thing that I learned throughout the year is just being more confident. So at the beginning of the year, we'd have all these lists of admin jobs, and it is a bit soul destroying. But I think as I gained more confidence throughout the year, I would just ask a lot more questions, and then suddenly you can make these boring, mundane tasks actually a bit more worthwhile for you. And as I kind of got closer to my team, or had more confidence to ask the radiologist that I was vetting the scan a question, suddenly something that's quite boring, so going to vet a scan, I would just ask the radiologist a question like, what are you looking for? Is there something different I should have put on the request? And it's just asking those little questions not only makes it more interesting for you, it often helps you build better relationships with the people that you're working with, and just makes the boring tasks a learning opportunity. And hopefully then by the end of the year, you would have kind of got lots of little chunks of information along the way that would have made it a little bit more worth your time. But that, I think that takes a bit of time, a bit of confidence, because at the beginning I would have been far too scared to ask a radiologist a question. And again, on the phone as well to specialties often. So I'm in A&E at the moment, and I have to refer to specialties, and I often say, is there anything else I should have done on the examination? Because I don't do this very often. Is there anything that you're looking for? Any questions I should have asked? And that hopefully just means the next time I phone them up, I'm a little bit better and better. And then hopefully by the end of the year, I'll kind of be a lot more confident in doing those examinations that at the beginning of the year, I had no idea what I was doing really.
Yeah, I'm taking down these notes. I'm putting them down in a document for me in 2 years' time. So we've all sort of covered, well, we've danced around the topic of night shifts. I know Anas loves them. So I think we're going to go to Anas first. Tell us, how does one become like you? How do we enjoy a night shift?
I mean, let me correct this before my next boss starts putting me on all the night shifts. I enjoyed elements of night shifts. I enjoyed them mainly because it was that kind of surprisingly was super busy, quieter side of the hospital that I enjoyed, that let me do the real medicine that I enjoyed. And plus it challenged my clinical skills, because you have a lot less, you still have the support for the things you really want support for, but it pushes your confidence and pushes your clinical skills to the edge of your top of your license really. But I've always still felt well supported and safe. In terms of my top tips, definitely get into good rhythm of sleep. So the first night is always very hard to get right, but when you come back after your first night shift, definitely make sure that you create a good environment for sleeping at home, especially if the light is bright out there, to make sure you have a dark room, darken it as much as possible, block the light, wear an eye mask, whatever you need to do, just definitely make sure you get your 7 to 8 hours at least before the next shift. Get into healthy eating. I mean, probably most of you guys know how our brain works with circadian rhythm. You end up when you sleep deprived, you start snacking and eating unhealthy, and that's not helpful for the sleep or for your sugar levels during the day. So maintain a healthy diet even if your meals are no longer in the right time of the day. Pack some snacks for the night shift, healthy snacks, otherwise you're going to end up going to that vending machine again and again. You're going to regret it the next day. And chances are 80% of the time you're more dehydrated than you think you are. So always have a bottle of water with you, and always make sure that you remember to drink even though you might forget to do so. So stay hydrated, pack healthy snacks, sleep the night before. Oh yeah, and make sure you have all your cheat sheets with you. So you don't want to be scrambling a night shift looking for a BNF or an Oxford handbook because you're seeing this tricky patient. I know most of us have now clever apps on our phone, but back in my day, we still use these books. But apps or books, whatever it is, make sure you have your cheat sheets because you're going to love them in the night shifts. And get to know your fellow night owls who can be with you on that night shift. Nurses, fellow medics. That makes the night a lot more tolerable. To make sure that You get to know all of them if you're first or new on a ward. So these are kind of my top tips. Remember that even though you might feel that you are it, especially as an F2, you might feel that you're the one holding the bleep and you're responsible. You still have a lot of support. So even if you heard rumors about that consultant hates to be disturbed at night, don't make that reason that pushes you out of your comfort zone to do the wrong thing. Make that phone call. They are on call from home for a reason. They're being paid to do that, to support you. So make sure you reach out when you need that help. So that way night shifts are not dreadful. They're dreadful as they are for many reasons. Make sure they're not dreadful by feeling that you are unsupported and you're on your own. So speak up, get some help. 99% of the time, your seniors, registrars, or consultants are there happily to help you. They'll be more upset if you haven't called them than if you have. And for that 1% of the time, whatever, just do it anyways.
Honestly, when you started talking about dehydration, I was like looking like, where's my water bottle? I haven't drank this morning, but that's fine. You know, mine has like the little thing on the side where it's like 9 a.m., 11 a.m., like little thing, and at the bottom, like refill. I religiously go by like, oh my goodness, I'm behind on my like 3 p.m. water check. Oh no, okay, let's go and get some water. Amy, how did you find your first year of night shifts? Do you think that Anas's tips will come in handy for your next year of night shifts?
So I actually really like nights as well. It's different. It breaks up, you know, the normal 9 to 5 jobs that you have. And it's just a very different atmosphere for you to learn in. And I think there's much better teamwork. You all feel a bit sorry for each other because you're up overnight. So usually go for breakfast after night. So it's just a nice atmosphere to work in, I find. And the nurses are often quite nice to you as well. I would agree that sleep hygiene is so important. So it's not something I tend to worry about in my day-to-day life. But when you're on nights, it's surprising how difficult it can be to sleep during the day. I think you might be asked to do something, like your friends are out, do you want to come for coffee? And obviously you have to say no because sleep has to be the priority. And as well, I think if you're someone that says yes to a lot of things and you've got lots of projects on, it can be quite tempting because the sun's up to just think, oh, I can do a few hours before I go to bed. So what I tend to do before I start a run of nights is to have a big to-do list. So I know exactly everything that's going on in life at the moment and all the things I need to do, and then just kind of put it away. Don't look at it through the nights and just know that, you know, on the weekend or the days I have off, those jobs are all for then and they can wait because sleep has to be a priority. And one other thing I would just say is just be careful when you're drinking coffee overnight. I think I've definitely made the mistake of having a bit of a dip at 6 a.m. So having a load of coffee or sugar, and then I get home at 8 or 8:30 and I can't sleep because I've actually had a coffee really recently. So just be a bit cautious about when you're actually drinking coffee during the night. I usually stop about 2 or 3 a.m. now so that I can actually sleep when I get back. So definitely sleep hygiene and making sure that you're not distracted in the day by social things or your other projects.
Yeah, I think that's I think that's very useful, especially with the coffee, because I feel like a lot of people who work in healthcare are just coffee addicts. I can't have coffee or tea. Literally, if I have a Diet Coke, I start like shaking. Like I need to get over this, because so many people, my GP was like, no, you're going to be drinking coffee soon. And I was like, okay, if you say so. But yeah, and I'm also definitely the sort of person who would just come in, like rock up, like half dead, needing to sleep. And someone's like, oh, should we go out for brunch? And I'll be like, yeah, okay, that's fine. So it's good to know that someone's been there, done that, and has now recommended, do not do that. Sleep comes first. You can always go for like a late brunch at like maybe like 3 p.m. I don't know. But Caroline, how was your sort of experience of night shifts in Amsterdam? Was it sort of similar, and what tips would you give to people who are going to have night shifts imminently at one point?
Yeah, it's a bit similar, and I think also a lot has been covered, but I also really recommend I don't drink coffee during night shifts, but I do normally. I really love coffee. But during night shifts, I stick to tea because I cannot sleep otherwise when I come home. And I also do really recommend to clear your schedule during the days, because I also in the beginning you are like, oh, I have all that time and I can do like breakfast or lunch, but you really need your sleep, because otherwise you cannot make it through the whole week. So really prioritize your sleep, and just do not plan a lot, and do not expect a lot of yourself, because changing your whole biorhythm is already a lot for your body. And you will be tired, and that's normal. And maybe also because, of course, in some specialties you stay up the whole night. But for example, in psychiatry, you are on call. So maybe because it's also really a challenge when you can sleep during the night to really sleep, because you sleep beside a phone and you know that it can ring any moment. You also really start to go in your head, like thinking, oh, when will they call and what will happen? So that's also really a learning process, to let go of that a bit and to still sleep a bit. So yeah, it's just, you just have to, I think it's also a bit of your mind, just telling your head you're just going to do it, and do not think too much about it or ruminate, because that's not going to help. And I really recommend, eating healthy. I always eat before I go to sleep in the morning, because if you go sleeping with an empty belly, I wake up really early, so that can help. And really try to maintain like a healthy diet and drink enough water, because that's important. Yeah, and really rest enough. And I also, because in the beginning I still wanted to go to the gym or do yoga practice, but sometimes you also have to let things go, because it's not possible to do it all.
Yeah. So Cam, we've had a few tips already, but what I want to directly ask you before we go on to the tips is, now, do you sleep on a night shift, and should you sleep on a night shift? Because that's something I've got in my head right now, because I'm thinking exactly like Caroline said, if you like nap somewhere and half your mind's like, oh my god, but what if someone rings me and then I'm napping, and then can you imagine explaining that to like the consultant, like, yeah, sorry, I was just asleep. So where do you stand on that?
I wish I could have slept on a night shift, because unfortunately I was on A&E, so they didn't let you actually leave the apartment, whereas I think for other specialties, like you can, I think you should actually get some, when you've got downtime, you should steal a few moments here and there, because it does reinvigorate you just a little bit more. But yeah, that was actually one of the big bugbears of mine, like, because at least with other specialties you could get bleeped to where you needed to be if something needed to happen, whereas annoyingly in A&E you kind of had to be ready to wait for the next patient, even if there wasn't many people waiting. But so I wish I could answer that, but with an honest answer. But yeah, I didn't sleep on my night shifts. But I also now feel really incredibly guilty about drinking coffee on my night shift after everyone's told me not to. I wish I could stay awake without coffee. But I think the food is a big thing, actually. I think you really do need to get the same amount of energy over the night as you would be in the day. Otherwise, you're just going to feel so much worse for it, especially if you've got a run of like 4 or 5 nights. That can be an absolute killer. My one quite niche tip, though, I would say for post-night, although it did end badly one day, was try and wear, it sounds really like celebrity, but try and wear some sunglasses after your night shift if you're going out into the light again, or something like at least just dark, because once you leave the hospital, then your circadian rhythm just it gets another kick if the sun hits you. So it looks a bit rogue actually when you're leaving hospital, like some celebrity that's being treated. But put some sunglasses on until you at least get on public transport or whatever. And actually, I took the tube back home, but I know a lot of people really struggle to drive after night shifts, especially if they were really tired. So I think it is really important that you know your own body, actually. And I think if you can get public transport, or if you can get someone to pick you up after a night shift, I think that'd be really, really important, because, well, I mean, by the end of the night, especially after a run of 3 or 4, your brain really is quite frazzled. So the last thing that you want to be doing when you're like that is driving. So I do think that's actually really important to keep in mind how you're going to get home after these shifts. And yeah, I think, like a lot of people have said, setting your room up for sleeping well, covering your windows, blackout blinds, that sort of thing. And yeah, saying goodbye to your social life while you're on nights, because like the other people have said, like, I really did enjoy night shifts when you're there, but I hated what they did to the rest of your life, because they do knock you for 6. And I always really struggled going into nights and adjusting my sleep pattern that the day before. I found coming out of nights quite fine. I would just have a small nap after my last night shift, wake up feeling really groggy, and then you'd get a good night's sleep. Whereas some people actually stay up all day, which I find outrageous. I don't know how they do that, but at least just try and get into your own rhythm. And then once you know that, stick to it, because you'll then be mentally and physically prepared to, take on whatever it throws at you.
I don't know if it's just me or if anyone else has this image, but I can just imagine Cam after like a string of night shifts with his sunglasses on and a hood up. And I'm just like linking it to a picture of Leonardo DiCaprio when he like just wears the same jacket and like glasses each day for like weeks on end, so that the paparazzi don't take a picture of him, because it just seems like it all happened on the same day. I don't know, but I just get the same sort of like coming out like, don't know.
I mean, I'll take a comparison with Leo any day.
It's Leo enough with glasses on. Come on, Cam. It's not the best compliment you could get. So now my final question is, I think we all know that you guys are experts on how to like keep healthy, and you've got all these projects going on which are there to sort of help people in all different ways to keep healthy, get on top of things, flexible working. So I just want to ask each of you if you could summarize your advice for those starting foundation training, or those, going on to sort of the second step, how, your own experiences has shaped your advice, as well as the sort of work that you do, and how that will, how that side of things can help them in that way. So if we start with Cam, so you've obviously got the TED Senior project, as well as your own experience to give us some advice on.
Yeah, so I mean, with the foundation and actually another project that a few colleagues and I set up during the COVID pandemic, we started something called the Welfare Ambassadors Scheme in our hospital. So I think we all realised that the welfare was a massive buzzword, especially for people sort of higher up in the hospital and management and things like that. They were often saying, you should do this, you should do that. But we quickly realised that actually the most important thing that you can do as someone's colleague actually is have effective conversations with them like during your time. So that would be my advice to anyone starting foundation training now, is that the people around you, and you will get on with some of them, some people you won't click with, that's fine, and that's normal life. But actually you'll end up spending more time with these people than you will with your family and friends, which is quite sad, but it actually can be really great as well. So I think it's important that even if it's a 5-minute conversation with someone that maybe isn't quite right on that day, or perhaps has been having a bit of a tough run of nights, that can make a massive difference to someone just by having a real conversation, not just saying, oh, what are you doing on the weekend, that sort of thing, but just by saying, how are you, especially during COVID, it was, how are you, how is it you haven't been able to see your family, this sort of thing. How are you really getting on? Even if they say, I'm doing okay, or sometimes they'll say, actually, it would be nice, could we just go grab a coffee about this and just have a bit more of an actual chat. That's what we sort of realized, that actually by having a proactive approach to people actually having conversations with their colleagues made a massive difference. And we feel more of a difference than, for example, just doing some sessions here and there, put on by the bosses in the hospital. By having actual genuinely meaningful conversations with people, I think it really makes a difference to how you all function as a team. And then you feel valued, and I think other people around you feel valued too.
Yeah, thank you. So, Caroline, from the sort of international side of things and mental health, what sort of advice would you be able to give us very briefly, so that people can just hear the snippet and then sort of gauge, okay, this is what I need to do for the next year? Oh, I think you might be muted. Oh, no, there you go. Sorry, my bad.
I think it's really important to support each other. In the Netherlands, we have also little groups of people in the same cohort or level, because I think it's really important that you have like peer support, because you're all going through the same thing. And of course, it's really nice to really connect also with maybe your superiors or residents in training. But of course, some people are not open for that, or you will have supervisors who you just think they don't like you. And I think it's also really like letting go of the fact that everyone should like you or that you should be perfect, because you're learning. And part of learning is also making mistakes, and you know, it's about like getting up again and doing it better next time. So I think it's really important that you allow yourself to do that, and to really it are learning opportunities, and you also learn what you're not good at or what you're really good at. I learned I'm really good in conversations, and I really like that part of medicine. And it's also a bit like getting to know yourself a bit better, and yeah, who you are. And for you, because of course there's a huge in healthcare, and I think it's really important that not only like on the level of a new generation of doctors, but also more on the superior level, we all kind of start to be aware of what we really teach people, because of course superiors are role models, and usually they are really embedded in a culture that it's really hard to be vulnerable. But of course it's really important, because how you feel influences the work that you do, the quality, the patient safety, and it's also really important that you keep enjoying what you do, because a lot of us go into work with a lot of passion, and it's really end up in a working environment that you feel also fills you up and not only drains you, because it has to be a balance. So yeah, I think it's really good that we have conversations like this.
Perfect. So I'm aware of time. So Anas, if you could just give us like a very quick, basically advice comment with your the wonderful Patchwork, the sort of flexibility of the whole company for future doctors to sort of see and get involved in. You might be muted, or maybe it's my internet again.
Am I muted?
You're fine now.
Oh, perfect. The host muted me. I think it's Johan. I would just say that, I mean, just my one advice is twofold. First of all, you know, I think it sounds obvious, but you can quickly forget as F1 or F2 that this is your first impression of career as medicine, and think that this is my life, this is my career, this is what I've chosen. But hang in there, it does get much better. Just always think of what consultants have to do, and realize that that's probably the majority of your career is going to be as a consultant, not as a foundation doctor. So that helps. And then make sure that you always start, you know, engaging with your consultants as peers, as mentors, so they can guide you through that journey rather than as your manager. And just make sure you break out that mentality as early as possible. And take ownership over your training. Sometimes it does feel that training is done onto us as trainees, rather than training something that we own. The world of flexible working and flexible training is changing fast, and I think the next decade we'll see some exciting changes, led from the grassroots as well as from the top, with the new head of flexible training, flexible working in the NHS, as well as a lot of conversations happening about training programs. But please do consider taking time out if you think you need time out to training. Look for fellowships and training fellowships. That gives you a sense of control of where to work and how to work. Explore CSER routes and other routes. And if the current training program you're in is suiting your needs, then great. If it's not, there are options out there. Definitely seek them. And the future is looking much more positive on flexible training routes.
Perfect. And Amy, just if you could basically summarize your advice in like one sentence, what would it be? Oh, I think you're muted.
I would just add to Cam's comment and say, as well as asking your colleagues how they're doing, don't be afraid to ask if you need a debrief as well, because sometimes they don't happen. So you can always just go to your seniors later that day, or even, you know, a week later if it's still on your mind, and just say, do you mind actually if we talk about what happened? Because they'll always be happy to, and it can make a really big difference.
Well, thank you so much everyone for joining. Just to conclude, so our session is now over, but the workshops are going to be on Slack, so go check them out. We've got a great array of different topics for you to cover. Don't worry if you're not a Slack wizard. I'm not. So we are going to put up a link. So go join on link 3 and it will tell you how to download Slack, get involved, join on to the workshops. But if you are a Slack wizard, just go to the workshops, use the links, find which ones that you're interested in. But then make sure you come back to us at 3 p.m. to continue the conferences. So you'll find out all about national and international organisations through FDocs that you can get involved in to help you. So don't miss out. Make sure you come because we've saved the best to last. But thank you very much to everyone watching and to the amazing panelists.